Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. So today it's going to be a different video. You've seen me work with Arduinos before, Raspberry Pis, and I've done videos related to cryptocurrency, but today I'm going to go on a little bit different path to explore one of my other hobbies, which is amateur radio, also known as ham radio. And if you don't know what that is, it's a hobby, or it can actually be a service as well, where licensed amateur radio operators, also known as hams, actually use radios such as this radio to communicate with each other through airwaves, through radio frequency, which is essentially the basis of everything, radio communications. And what we do is we could use voice to communicate, we could use Morse code to communicate, we could use other modes such as packet radio, slow scan television to to send pictures to each other. So there's a lot of different modes we could use to communicate with each other, and this isn't a hobby which you can earn money like mining cryptocurrency, for example. It's more about self-learning, exploring different parts of the hobby, meeting new friends on the air. So it's totally different to what I've done before on this channel. And I'm going to be doing a lot of videos related to the different aspects of amateur radio. One of the most common aspects is just talking to each other, whether it's simplex, so direct radio to radio, or through a repeater, which is essentially a device where you transmit to and the repeater repeats or retransmits your signal out. And for today, I'm just going to be discussing one of my first radios that I've gotten when I started out this hobby about 2 years ago. I'm an amateur radio operator licensed and with the call sign of 9W2IXY, or in the internationally recognized phonetics, 9 Whiskey 2 India X-Ray Yankee. And it depends on your country, but each country, they have their own licensing system, and most countries require you to take an exam. I think most exams have multiple choice, where after you pass the exam, and depending on the country, of course, you can get a license to operate on certain frequencies and using certain modes only. So there are regulatory bodies around the world which enforce these rules. So this is one of my first amateur radios, and it's not meant to be for an amateur radio operator. This is used commercially. You see these with security guards in shops, in large events. A lot of people just carry this around. It's the Baofeng BF888S, so BF888S. And it's simply a UHF transceiver. UHF stands for ultra high frequency, and there are, of course, a whole range of frequencies in that UHF spectrum. But this just covers 400 to 470 megahertz. And that's the frequency which this operates on, and it's also known as the 70 centimeter band. And why 70 centimeters? Because 70 centimeters is the wavelength of that frequency. So there are different bands such as 40 meters, which is around 7 megahertz, and there's also 2 meters, it's around 145 megahertz. So this works on the 70 centimeter band. It's quite a basic transceiver. I actually received this as a gift, and it's very, very cheap. It's very, very low cost. It's around, I think you can find this for maybe $10 even. It's extremely cheap. It could probably go down to $5 as well. And it's not a bad radio if you want to like hand out to a large group of people, because amateur radio can be used for natural disasters, for emergencies, and that's why we operate on these radios every day. So in the event of a natural disaster, like such as a hurricane or a massive power outage, where where cell phone towers are down or where the internet's down, we rely on amateur radio to communicate with each other. So amateur radio does have its place in society. And this is a simple UHF transceiver. As you can see, this is the antenna, this is the main radio body, the speaker, the microphone. We have two knobs here. One controls the power and the volume, which is this one, and this is a channel knob. And towards the side, it's the PTT button, and these are two programmable buttons. You can program it in the software for squelch. There's a flashlight as well, so you could program it for that to open the squelch as well. The different options, and as you can see, at the back, it's just a basic radio. There's a belt clip, a hand strap, and these are the two charging terminals. This does come with a drop-in charger, just a normal drop-in charger, where you can just drop it in and plug it in to charge the radio. And as you can see, it's quite a small radio, so of course And especially since it's low power, I think it's the maximum output power of 3 watts. It's not going to use a lot of battery when operating, so I actually rarely charge it. I mainly bring this along with me to hikes or to long road trips where, since this is such a cheap radio, I don't, it's not really going to be of utmost importance if it gets damaged or if it gets lost. And radios like this, they do come in different forms. This is just a very basic radio. However, as you move on, you may want to explore different fields of amateur radio. For example, this is the Retevis RT52. As you can see, I actually upgraded the antenna. This is a telescopic antenna, so it extends out all the way, and it's known as a whip antenna. And these stock antennas, they aren't that good because they're just made for the radio to come with. It's not really made for performance, and a lot of people refer to these as rubber duckies. However, this is a Retevis RT52. As you can see, it's a much more physically larger radio. I will do a more in-depth review of this radio further down, but it's a DMR radio. It operates actually on VHF and UHF, so not only 400 to 470 megahertz, which is 70 centimeters, but 2 meters as well, around I believe 140 to 148 megahertz this can transmit and receive on. And this is a digital radio. It uses DMR, which is digital mobile radio. I will do more videos on that because it can get quite complicated, and as you move on with this hobby, you'll pick up so many things. But to put that aside, we'll be focusing on this radio. It's quite a simple radio to program, and as you can see here, this is actually a plug for the programming cable. If we open it up, it relies on a 2-pin programming cable. There's one pin here and a much larger pin over here. It's known as a K type, a Kenwood type connector. Just 2 pins. I think it will look somewhat like 3.5 millimeter audio connectors. You just plug it in and you connect it to a computer via USB. So this radio, I'm not too sure how many channels it can hold. I believe 16 or so, but it does give you plenty of options in terms of what you can program. If I turn it on, power on. Yep, that's the voice prompt, and as I change the channel, the voice prompt will indicate what channel it is on. 3, 4. And I'm not sure 9, what the 14, 16, 16. Looks like 16 is actually the limit for the channel, so it's the maximum number of channels is 16. As you can see, this is an LED, so when it receives something, I don't have it programmed to a repeater right now, but if it receives something, it turns green, and when you push the PTT, let me change to channel 1, it will turn red, as you can see over there. So I'm just going to test it out. I'm actually, I programmed this channel to a repeater. So as you can see, that's the Morse code identification of the repeater. So if I test it out, 9 Whiskey 2 India X-ray Yankee testing. So you can hear the repeater coming back to me. So that's how I know that I'm actually hitting the repeater. So anyways, this is a super simple radio to use. It doesn't have a display or any type of keypad for you to program it on the go. So that's a disadvantage of this. But for large events, when you're handing it out to family members, for example, if you want to communicate with them, it's a good radio to do so. But with amateur radio, you need to be licensed. You can't be just simply buying this radio, and you can't be talking on the air without being licensed. In America, they use the FCC licensing system, where it's similar to other countries. You need to take an exam to get the license. It is illegal to operate on radios such as this without a amateur radio license, or I know there's commercial licenses which companies buy so that they can actually use a specific frequency for the personnel when they do their daily communications. So it is important to know that you can't just be buying these online and randomly programming it and transmitting on the band and essentially causing interference to others. That's a big no-no when it comes to amateur radio. However, I will go more into depth about those topics as I progress more with these kinds of radios. I just wanted to introduce a bit about amateur radio as well as this radio specifically to the channel. So if you're interested, feel free to write a comment below. I do plan to get into other topics such as with things like this. This is actually a digital hotspot. It gets me on digital modes, and then there's also Morse code. This is a 3D printed Morse key actually, which it's basically one of the types of equipment you use to send out Morse code. This is just a simple 3D printed Morse code key, a straight key. And there's other aspects as well. There's other radios that I plan to review. There's also this. It's actually connected to an external antenna right now. So if I flip it around, this is another Baofeng radio. It's the BM1801. It's a DMR radio similar to the Vetavis that I showed, but completely different. Very different from this Baofeng BF888S. So I will be definitely posting more videos about amateur radio and the different aspects of amateur radio. I do plan to do more reviews on the radios that I have, as well as the other types of communication within amateur radio, such as satellites. However, I will do a programming video focusing on how to program this radio, because with Baofengs it can be a little bit tricky at times. So with that said, thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to leave a comment, whether it's a suggestion, a question, or anything else. And I'll see you in the next video.